Okay, so let's just unpack this right away. We are not talking about prime ministers or CEOs here. We are talking about a gray-backed rhino, a blue whale, a tiger, and even a handful of wild seeds.
It sounds like a fable right off the bat. But what we are diving into today, which is Chapter 8 of The Awakening by Mahendra Shah, well, it treats this scenario with deadly seriousness. It is this narrative experiment that asks a pretty terrifying question. If the natural world, the animals, the plants, the ocean itself, if they could organize and speak, what would they say to us?
Yeah.
And more importantly, what would they decide to actually do with us?
Because the whole premise of this source material is that the animals of Earth have gathered for a reckoning. They have watched humanity fail at climate promises year after year, and now they are debating two radical paths. Do they offer one final diplomatic contract, or do they declare all-out war?
And the atmosphere in this text, it is just suffocating. Before a single word is even spoken by the delegates, Shah sets the scene with this incredibly subtle but disturbing metaphor. Did you catch the detail about the fruit?
Oh, the fruit on the rock.
Sure.
Yes. It is such a cinematic image to open with. Just a single piece of fruit left on a flat rock right at the edge of the crater.
Right. And over the course of this 3-day summit, the text describes this piece of fruit decaying. First, the flies circle it. Then a squirrel looks at it, but does not even touch it. It darkens, it softens, it acts as this silent, ticking clock in the background of all the arguments.
It is eerie. It is like, while everyone is debating diplomacy versus war, time is literally rotting away.
Exactly. It signifies that the time for indecision is completely gone, the fruit is spoiling, and that sets the stage for the first speaker to step up, which is the gray-backed rhino. And he really does not pull any punches.
He really does not. And what struck me was how familiar his argument sounded, but coming from a rhino, it just hits so differently. He lists the human summons. He says, Kyoto, Paris, Glasgow, Dubai. He says they agree, they shake hands. Then the emissions go up again.
It is the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting different results. The rhino points out that in 2023, 95% of the Earth felt abnormal heat. I mean, that is a staggering number to throw down right at the start.
It is.
And his primary frustration is actually with the language we use. We humans keep calling these extreme weather events unprecedented.
Oh, that part gave me chills. He says they keep calling it unprecedented. But then it happens again. It is almost like we are
gaslighting nature.
Exactly. We're gaslighting nature.
That is exactly what it is. Because if something happens every single year, it is not unprecedented anymore. It is systemic. The rhino is calling out our use of language to constantly distance ourselves from the reality of what we are doing.
And then the muskox steps into the center. And this is the moment in the reading that really stopped me in my tracks. We usually talk about the red list, the list of endangered species. Is this desperate warning system. But the muskox mentions 5 birds that just disappeared this year.
And not because their populations rebounded and they were saved.
No. He says they're gone from the red list because there's no list left to put them on.
That is heavy. It is administrative deletion. The bureaucracy of extinction creates this weird void where once a species is completely gone, we just clean up the spreadsheet and move on. The muskox is highlighting that our human tools for tracking this loss are totally failing to capture the finality of it.
It is basically data cleanup as a eulogy.
Wow.
And the data just keeps piling up from there. You have a marmot next, a small creature quoting a WMO update about night temperatures. We usually focus on the heat of the day when we talk about climate change, but the marmot points out that in some cities, night temperatures are now higher than what used to be the normal daytime high.
Which is biologically devastating for almost everything alive. Mammals, humans included, we rely on the nighttime temperature drop to repair cellular damage and regulate our metabolism. If the temperature never drops, the body never resets.
Right.
So the marmot is essentially saying, you aren't just making it hot, you are stealing our sleep. You are stealing our recovery.
So there is no relief. Even when you close your eyes, the heat is just there.
And the synthesis of this opening section is crystal clear. The animals are not just confused victims anymore. They are actively documenting our failure. They brought the receipts.
They really did. And that leads us seamlessly into the second part of the text, which shifts the focus from just, it is hot, to something much more accusatory. It becomes, you promised to protect us, and you lied. And this is where the tiger takes the center circle.
The tiger's testimony is fascinating. It targets the utter hypocrisy of human conservation efforts. We tell ourselves we are protecting these species, but the tiger cites data from traffic, which is the Wildlife Trade Monitoring Network.
Right, and the data the tiger brings up shows that more skins, claws, and bones are moving across borders right now than ever before. So legally we say save the tigers, but practically the black market is absolutely booming.
And the tiger points out that we build roads right through their ancient forests while handing them these empty promises of protection. It is a complete disconnect between policy and reality. The laws exist on paper, but the excavators exist in the forest.
But speaking of disconnects, the jaguar's point, I have to be honest, I've never thought about national parks this way before. It felt like a total inversion of how we view ecotourism.
It is highly uncomfortable to read, isn't it? The jaguar talks about the national parks in South America. We humans think of them as these beautiful, protected sanctuaries. The jaguar calls them, well, essentially zoos without cages, built entirely for our benefit.
Yeah, he says, they sell tickets for others to look at us. It frames it as purely entertainment. And then he makes this threat that is honestly kind of terrifying. He suggests a new form of protest.
Occupying the tourist lodges.
Yes. Just imagine that. You are on your expensive eco-vacation, you wake up in the middle of the night, and the lodge and the paths outside are just filled with jaguars. Not attacking, just standing there in the dark.
To remind them whose land this really is, that is the exact quote. It is all about disrupting the comfort of the human experience. The jaguar's logic is, if we cannot ignore them, we have to acknowledge them. It challenges the entire human notion that nature is just a scenic backdrop for our leisure time.
And that theme of physical disruption carries right over to the elephant's testimony. Now, this is an elderly elephant speaking, and the focus here shifts to infrastructure. We always hear about development as a universally good thing. But the elephant drops a massive stat. 70% of elephant numbers are gone, and there are 180,000 kilometers of new highways in Asia.
Cutting right through their traditional forests, the elephant describes the brutal reality of that. To get to water or food, they have to navigate these massive, noisy roads with speeding trucks. It is a literal death trap. But beyond the physical danger, the elephant talks about the fragmentation of their culture.
Their culture. That is a word we rarely apply to animals.
But we absolutely should. Elephants rely heavily on passing down knowledge, migration routes, hidden water sources. They pass this down from generation to generation. When a massive highway slices a herd's territory in half, that crucial knowledge chain is broken. They become refugees in their own home.
And the real tragedy is, as the elephant notes so bitterly, humans love to build statues of animals once they're completely extinct.
Oh, that line is a gut punch.
It really broke my heart. We don't want their statues. We want safe paths. It is such a simple, pragmatic demand. Stop memorializing us in bronze and just let us walk across the forest.
And we cannot forget the giraffe in this section either.
The giraffe. You would think, being so incredibly tall, they would be pretty hard to miss.
That is the tragic irony the giraffe points out. They are hiding in plain sight. There are only 4 types of giraffes left, with less than 1,000 of specific kinds remaining. Because they are tall, humans look at them and think they are fine. But their territory on the ground is being completely sliced up by farms and fences.
So they are losing the horizontal space they need to actually survive, even if they still occupy the vertical space.
Precisely. They are being squeezed out of existence right in front of us.
So we have the land animals presenting this incredible dossier of human failure, but then the narrative shifts to the water's edge, and if you think the situation on land is bad, the ocean sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It is the invisible pollution that is so striking in this part of the text. The dolphin speaks up about noise.
Noise pollution. I really think we underestimate this as a species.
Drastically underestimated. The dolphin cites that shipping noise in the North Atlantic is 30% louder than it was just 10 years ago. Now, for us, loud noise is just annoying, but for a dolphin or a whale, sound is sight.
Right.
It is how they hunt, it is how they navigate the deep, it is how they talk to their pods across hundreds of miles. We are essentially creating this acoustic fog that effectively blinds them.
And then there is the physical pollution. The microplastic.
Yeah. The dolphin brings up a study from February. Microplastics were found in 90% of fish tested. And the dolphin delivers this with a really stinging irony. Humans are now eating the plastic they threw away.
It is a totally closed loop of garbage. We throw the plastic in the water. The fish eat the plastic. We pull the fish out, and we eat the fish.
Exactly. It is a boomerang effect. Humans love to think we can throw things away. But in a closed, circular ecosystem like planet Earth, there is no way. It all comes back to the source eventually.
But there is one speaker in this section that I think represents the most fundamental crisis of all. And it is not a charismatic megafauna. It is not a massive whale or a roaring tiger. It is the seed.
The wild seeds. And the baobab tree speaking for them. This part felt almost biblical to read, the idea of the absolute smallest things carrying the biggest, most dire warning.
The stats here are frankly terrifying from a basic survival standpoint. The seed points out that since 1900, 75% of crop diversity has disappeared entirely. That is FAO data. And in the last 10 years alone, 1,000 distinct seed varieties have been lost forever.
And this is where we really need to pay close attention to the source material.
Because, playing devil's advocate for a second, if I'm a listener thinking, well, we still have fields of corn and wheat, why do we actually need 1,000 other obscure varieties of seeds?
The baobab explains it perfectly. Seeds are tools. They carry the deep genetic history of how to survive extreme drought, new pests, and unprecedented heat. If you lose the diversity of those seeds, nature loses the genetic toolkit required to adapt.
I see.
Think of it like burning the library of blueprints for how to fix the ecosystem.
So if a new disease hits our main monoculture crops, and we have already killed off the wild cousins that actually had the natural immunity,
We have no backup plan. We are actively breaking the repair mechanism of the planet itself. The quote from the text is, "Nature struggles to rebuild. Without that diverse seed bank, the entire system becomes dangerously brittle. It simply cannot bounce back after a fire or a blight."
That makes total sense. So you have this massive mountain of evidence presented to the creator. The heat records, the poaching data, the plastic in the fish, the loss of the foundational seeds. The summit has heard all the grievances. Now they have to decide what to actually do about it. And this is where the text shifts gears into a really tense political debate.
The hawks versus the doves.
Essentially, yes. You have the pro-conflict faction demanding action and the pro-diplomacy faction begging for restraint.
Let's talk about the hawks first. This aggressive group is led by the lion, the snow leopard, and the Komodo dragon. And they are completely done talking.
The lion proposes blocking human roads and interrupting trade routes. It is straightforward economic warfare. He says if their trucks cannot move, they will be forced to acknowledge us.
But the snow leopard and the Komodo dragon, their proposal is much more psychological. They want to leave marks.
Claw marks on parliament buildings, on corporate offices, deep, visible scratches on the heavy doors of human power.
That is such a chilling, evocative image. Imagine a world leader walking up to their secure office in the morning and finding deep animal gouges in the mahogany door.
It is terrifying because it implies access. It means the security failed.
Exactly. It is about undeniable presence. The Komodo dragon says humans cannot ignore what is right in front of them. It is a way of communicating, we can get to you. We are right here. It is a threat of physical violence without necessarily committing the act of killing right away. But the message is crystal clear. You are not safe in your concrete towers.
So that is the path of pressure. Immediate, direct action. But then you have the dove speaking up, the blue whale and the dolphin. And the blue whale brings up a very practical, almost military point about starting a war.
The blue whale serves as the voice of strategic reason here. He warns that if they attack, if they turn the coastlines into conflict zones, humans will not just back down and apologize.
Right, we never do.
We will just build higher seawalls, we will militarize the ocean even more, and the ocean will suffer far greater damage. He argues that declaring war will just accelerate their own destruction.
So instead of war, the dolphin proposes a contract, a highly specific letter to humanity.
A set of concrete demands, not just some vague plea to save the planet, but 3 very specific things. Stop seabed mining, stop sonar blasts, and stop single-use plastics.
It is presented as one final olive branch, a test of our humanity. Here are 3 concrete things. Do them immediately or else the hawks take over.
And this fierce debate between war and a treaty creates this incredible tension in the crater. But then, just when you think you fully understand the stakes of the vote, another perspective comes in that completely reframes the whole human concept of peace.
The albatross and the swallow.
Yes. The albatross speaks up. This bird has been flying over the oceans for 80 years. He tells the summit he has personally witnessed 40 human wars from the sky.
40 human wars in one lifetime. That really puts our history into a grim perspective.
And his primary observation is that from the sky, war always looks exactly the same. Forests burning, rivers turning dark with oil and blood. But the swallow makes a point that I think most humans miss entirely.
The swallow brings up the CIPRI report.
The 2024 Stockholm International Peace Research Institute report. The swallow points out that even peacetime rebuilding destroys nature just as effectively as bombs do. When humans declare a war is over, what do?
We rebuild the cities.
We rebuild, we pour millions of tons of concrete, we build massive new roads over green fields.
So from the perspective of the animals, human peace is really just a different kind of war on nature.
Exactly. Construction sites are just destroyed habitats by another name. It really drives home the point that our human definition of peace is completely anthropocentric. It only applies to us not shooting at each other. For the swallow, human peace just means bulldozers have returned to finish the job.
Wow. So we have heard the evidence of our crimes. We have heard the intense debate between violent pressure and a diplomatic contract. And now we reach the climax of Chapter 8, the ultimatum. He seems to be the facilitator of the summit, the elder statesman of this massive gathering. He finally takes the center of the circle.
And he forces the final decision. He tells the delegates, the decision we make tonight will set our future. He lays out the two paths so clearly. Option 1 is pressure. Immediate physical action. Blocking global trade, reclaiming the national parks, causing systemic chaos. Humans will feel it within weeks.
And option 2 is the contract. A clear, non-vague treaty sent directly to human leaders with those specific demands from the dolphin. A final chance for us to change voluntarily.
And the cliffhanger Shaw leaves us with is just brutal. Dugu says they must cast their votes and decide by sunrise. He says there will be no turning back.
And that is exactly where the chapter leaves us. Standing in that dark crater, the fruit finally rotting away on the rock, the sun just about to come up over the edge, and the entire natural world deciding whether to attack us or mail us a treaty.
It leaves you with such a heavy, lingering sense of responsibility, because when you really read it and absorb the data, you realize this isn't actually their choice at all. It is ours.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the animals are just reacting to what we have already done. The fact that they are even debating this extreme scenario shows how far we have pushed the systems of the earth. That rotting fruit metaphor we talked about at the beginning, it implies that the time for our passive delay is over. Nature is already reacting.
It is true. Whether it is the staggering heat records or the microplastics in our food chain, the reaction is already happening right now. The story just puts a face and a voice to it.
Exactly. The war option, they are debating blocking roads with floods, the unprecedented heat, the loss of crops. That is just a metaphor for what naturally happens if we ignore the physics of the planet. The contract option, changing our behavior, stopping the plastics, protecting the wild corridors, that represents the path we can still actively choose to accept.
So in a way, this fictional summit is completely real. It is just happening in slow motion all around us every single day.
That is the terrifying beauty of this source text. It takes the abstract climate data and makes it aggressively concrete. It gives a powerful voice to the 95% of the earth that cannot speak English.
It really does make you look at a bird or a tree differently when you walk outside. You kind of wonder, which way are you voting tonight?
And I think that is the ultimate question we have to leave the listener with today. If nature could organize, if they could sit down and look at the hard data, the 95% heat anomaly, the disappearing seeds, the 40 wars in a single lifetime, which path would we actually deserve?
That is a tough question.
It is.
And here's a final thought to mull over. What if the sun already came up on that crater? What if they already took the vote, the Hawks won, and the extreme weather events we are seeing right now are just the opening shots of that decision?
Oh, that is a chilling thought. If the contract is already off the table.
Are we ready for the answer? I don't think we are. But the sun is coming up either way.
Indeed it is.
Well, that is a sobering reality to end on. We have unpacked the profound grievances, the hard data, and the final ultimatum. The rest, as they say, is up to the delegates and to us.
It has been a great discussion.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the awakening. It is a heavy amount of material to process, but that is exactly why we do this. To find the crucial signal in all the noise. We will catch you on the next one. Keep listening.